Hello, KFC SuperCoaches. Teams are in for round 19. And in breaking news, Rob Sutherland is back from a couple of weeks off. Good to have you back in. You're feeling refreshed.
I am, Thomas. It's always the way when I go away on holidays and don't really think too hard about SuperCoach. My SuperCoach team goes better.
Yes,
go figure.
Exactly the same with me. Let's run through who your trades this week. Obviously, Papenhausen, most people are looking to sell. Most people who are serious about SuperCoach had Papenhausen in their side. So that's the number one question. Who to bring in for Pap?
Yeah, Pap's out for me, and Joseph Sawali would be the other one. I'm bringing in two guys who both play fullback and centre, Ruben Garrick and Val Holmes. I just like the way they can rotate between centre wing and fullbacks. I've got Latrell Mitchell as my other fullback. So I didn't want to bring in Teddy. That leaves me two fullback only options. I just like the flex.
Yeah, I'm thinking Teddy for now, but I am a little bit worried given that the Roosters are depleted this week, and we'll get to that soon, but a couple of ACL injuries over the weekend on top of what they already have. On the plus side, though, they've got a couple of guys back into that team, so I'm not quite sure what to make of the Roosters. And then you've got Cameron Munster, who I could bring in easily as well via duels with Nico Hines. So I'm tossing up those two. But I also like your idea of pumping up the centre wingers as well, because that is the position that tends to decide not just the 50k, but your head-to-head competitions.
Well, it certainly gives you a nice VC option with Joey Manu on occasions, yeah.
Yes, which worked
we both
out,
got that.
Which worked out well
So
last
I'd
week.
throw that in. Alex Brown missed out. He thought it was collusion, but it was not.
I'm almost certain he doesn't listen to our podcast.
Oh,
he gets all his advice just by coming over to our desk and talking
bit of an
gibberish
agony
for a
aunt
couple
session.
of minutes.
Anyway, that's enough about Alex Brown. If he's not listening to us, screw him. Let's move on to the round, shall we?
Winners, Payne Haas. So probably weren't expecting him to be back this week. I was expecting him to be rested for another week with those two shoulder injuries plus the ankle injury. But he's been named, so it's looking good for him. I think he'll come home pretty strongly after this rest. He's been averaging 52 recently, but at the start of the year, he was averaging 76. So I feel like we're going to be seeing more of up around that 76 region compared to the 52 between now and the end of the season.
Yeah, and I mean, you have a look at the bench. There should be a fair few minutes there for him. They are carrying Corey Pakes. It's not like they're carrying four big forwards on their bench. Payne Haas, I think some people are forgetting, Mr. Reliable Payne Haas was. His floor was 65 and he could pump out 80 without trying too hard. I held him and I'll be playing him this week.
Yeah, I've held him too. So obviously we're both biased in saying that we think he's going to bounce back.
Of course we are.
But yeah, look, if you have held on, it's certainly good news that he's back in the fold. The same with Madison. Ryan Madison, back after that rib injury. Hasn't played in about a month or so, but he's still really high in terms of average per round in the back row.
Yeah, and again, I've held. So, I have to sort of temper my speech here by saying that I'm a happy holder. And the bench, not so good. There's plenty of middle minutes there with Makatoa, Kafusi, and even Niokore. I don't think he's going to play 80. I bet Ryan Madison needs to play 55 with all those offloads he throws to score 75 in a pretty tough position.
Let's talk about Papenhausen replacements. We started the show with that, so let's run through a few. Latrell, I bought him a couple of weeks ago. He's averaging a fair bit over 100, 109 since he returned from this injury. In terms of eye test, he just looks very involved and just wants to be over everything. And the key stat for him, I think, is runs. Sometimes you see he'll make 3 runs in a game. And he might
often
score
2 tries in those.
But I think the big gauge for him is runs, because it just shows how involved he's getting. He's averaging 11 runs since he returned from injury, which is not very high for an NRL fullback, but it's extremely high for Latrell Mitchell, given that he was averaging 7 runs per game prior to that.
Yeah, look, with Latrell, even when he was at centre, it's always been much more quality over quantity. He's also a big game guy. He tends to get himself up for games. He's obviously wanted to really reward the South Sydney after they sent him away to the US to get his hamstring done. I've got him. I bought him when he came back in. I'm really, really happy. I'd just say when he's the most popular replacement for Paps, the draw is about as tough as it gets, South Sydney's draw. So You can either look at that and say that's a real negative, or you can look at that and say, well, Latrell's a big game guy and he gets himself up for big games. And the Rabbitohs do tend to come home pretty hard. So am I against getting Latrell? No, but I don't rate him as a number one replacement.
I just like what I'm seeing with Latrell and Cody Walker right now. Their combination's really good.
Because you have Cody Walker.
And I own both. And Lachlan Ilias is coming really good too. So I reckon they could come home with a wet sail, the Rabbitohs. Moving on to Tedesco. So hasn't been the best season by Tedesco's standards. He's still ranked 10th overall in SuperCoach.
Yeah, he looked good last week. I don't own Teddy, and obviously I'm a Roosters fan, so I watched every game. And it's both nerve-wracking and exciting to watch Teddy. You know, if you don't have him in SuperCoach, because he runs at the line and he just does that sort of stop and everyone stops and then he goes again. Not quite Joey Manu stops and props and everyone stops and he runs straight through the middle. That was golden. But I think he's in pretty good form. I think the Roosters are starting to warm up. They obviously would be pretty embarrassed if they miss the 8, and so that's a clear goal of the team.
Yep. Speaking of Roosters and making the 8, Joey Manu, very popular this week. The thing I point at, obviously he's been killing it the last sort of 5 or so weeks because he's been playing a lot of fullback and a lot of 5'8", averaging well over 100 in that time, which means his price has gone up to over 800k. He's back to centre this week, where he averages in the mid-70s for the season compared to well over 100 at fullback and 5'8". So I'm not saying it's a bad buy, but I am saying don't get too carried away looking at the recent stats because he is moving back to his less preferred position for SuperCoach.
I agree with everything you said. I would not be rushing to get Joey Manu. If I'm going to be a sunny optimist, and I'm still feeling a little bit of the back from holiday happiness, so maybe I will, it's that when he played last week and they had to slot him back out to the centres because of the injury to Billy Smith, they quickly realised they wanted him to attack at 5'8" and defend at the centres. Plus, the Roosters were running Connor Watson, Sammy Walker, Manu. They just had they were running halves all the way across the field. And I've got a feeling even with Kiri coming back, you might see Joey roam a bit more. You might see him chime himself in, not just sit at the centre and wait for that ball to come out to him. I think he might go looking a little bit.
Hopefully. Let's make it happen. Ruben Garrick is a guy...
We're manifesting it, basically.
Yeah, well, I mean, Garrick is a guy who, was killing it on the wing at the start of the season, but he's taken it to another level since Tommy Turbo got injured and he's moved to fullback, averaging 10 points better at fullback compared to at the wing at the start of the year. So, he's going really well, costs you lots of money, but as I said before, centre wing is a position that really can divide teams at this point of the season.
I'm happy to pay up for him. He scored well last weekend, even without the goal kicking. He did take one kick, and it was the last kick, if I remember correctly. So that's a good sign, right? So he wasn't kicking because of a niggle, but he did take a kick. And I don't think we've got him in the winners or losers, but I'd throw it in with DCE. He's become a bit of a vibe at purchases to get Cherry Evans, with people just looking at his scores the last 2 games. They're not looking at the fact that he's got about 35 points of those 34 points was from the kicking tee. So I think with Garrick back kicking, Garrick's got great value, more value in his kicking, and DCE loses value.
Yep, that's a really good point there. Val Holmes, there's a lot to like about him. He's having a very good season. Playing in the centres this year, the biggest thing, though, is that he's got an amazing run coming up in the next 3 weeks. Tigers, Dragons, who are a premiership threat this year, but you could score some points against them, and the Bulldogs.
Great draw, lots to play for. They're legitimately a top. They're pushing very hard to finish second. It hasn't got the huge games in him that Garrick, Holmes, Garrick, Teddy, and Latrell have put up even this year and historically. Val's never really gone big, but if he's going to, it could be this weekend, and I'm getting him, and I'm probably going to captain him.
Nice, huge call. The knock I've got against him is centre is not the best position for SuperCoach.
He still makes plenty of runs at centre. I agree. It's not the
I'd
best.
much prefer a fullback playing in my SuperCoach CTW than an actual centre.
Yeah, the Cows score a lot of points, and they're going to score a lot in the next few weeks.
Certainly, and that's a home game against the Tigers too, so they could go absolutely gangbusters this weekend.
Luch Leilua making his matchup against the Tigers at prop.
Prop.
Nothing to do with what we're talking about Val Holmes, but it still stands out.
But then those Dragons and Bulldogs games, I think off the top of my head, are away. So in Sydney, who knows what the weather's going to be like. So they could be a little bit tougher than they look on paper.
The rest, if the draw continues, it's pretty sweet, I've got to say.
Munster. I really like Munster. The main reason is that he's so far ahead at 5'8" than any other player. I know he's missed a bunch of games, but when you look at average, he's 10 points ahead of the next guy. That could make you give you a pretty serious gap on the field over the remaining rounds.
I'm getting him next week.
Yep.
I think even with Papenhausen being out, that just means Munster will do more rather than sit there and sort of do less like he could sometimes when they're at full strength. So I think it's a win.
Yep, I think Pap could easily go to him, or Ezra Mam could easily go to him as well this week. Grant Anderson, popular cheapie from a few weeks ago. We thought that he'd picked up a serious injury and he'd nuffed out for the rest of the year, but he's been named on the bench today, which means he's going to stuff around a whole lot of auto emergencies.
That's if he stays there. I mean, they might see it as, Rodwell. It's Rodwell? No, who's the winger that they've got? Anyway,
Wishart.
Rodwell.
You've been getting your old
I've got
NRL
Ty
players mixed
Rodwell
up.
and Rod Wishart. Wishart. Ty could go to, hooker if Harry Grant, because he was hobbling a bit, if Harry Grant needs help. But it wouldn't shock me if their bench is someone who can fill in a little better at 9.
And good to see a whole bunch of Origin players back after being rested last week, including Talakai Nathan Cleary, who's actually a really popular buy this week as people look to bring him back. Cameron Murray's another one.
He's a good buy. He's good value.
Well. Yeah, I'm actually really considering Penasini to Murray this week via duels, which would mean I could bring Firma or Targo or Tungo down into the...
Tungo.
Losers, Ryan Papenhuyzen, obviously. He has to go. Ezra Mam. Would you be selling Mam? He's made $250K, but he does have a couple of good matchups coming up. Not so much this week against the Eels, but a few weeks after that.
He's got the Tigers in 20 and the Knights in 22. Those are the weeks you might play him. Yeah, for me, though, he's got a BE of 20, so I'm going to hold him this week and sell him next week to Munster. Because I'll play Munster every week, not on dependent.
Look, if you can go Mam to Munster, then I would say lock it in. But a lot of people probably have Papenhausen to sell ahead of Mam.
Yep.
Well, Penasini, I think he does have to go. He's made his cash and he's starting to lose it pretty heavily now.
He's a rookie who's hit the wall.
Moving through each of the teams, looking at the Eels, Maddo's back, which we've spoken about. Any players you want to bring up here?
Other than Maddo, not really. I mean, Dylan Brown...
I was expecting Dylan Brown to be a bit higher in the most purchased list this week, given the injury to Papenhausen and the duels that you can swing with guys like Nico Owens. Yeah,
but I think that's just... to me, that's people going to Munster, but then also with the duels of Mam, they can go to DCE and they go to Cleary. So I think that's where that's going.
Moving on to the Bronx, good to see Payne Haas back. They've got a whole bunch of players back, including Oates, Haas, Capewell, Carrigan. Billy Walters is out though, and they've also... Selwyn Cobbo's not there, which is relatively big news because he's still a pretty popular player in SuperCoach. Who's standing out for you?
Look, I mean, we've talked about Haas, we've talked about Mam. There's nothing else there I want to own. I mean, Carrigan was in great form pre-Origin. But I don't know, maybe I prefer other guys at the second row. All I'll say is I actually think this is going to be a bloody good game.
Yep, absolutely. Dragons v the Sea Eagles at Cogra Oval. Always good to get down to Cogra Oval. Dragons, though, look, they did okay over Origin when they were playing teams that were completely depleted. But it's getting tougher for them now. To be honest, looking through this team list, there's no one who stands out for me at all.
Look, the best player that they had last week was my wife. They scored 12 points while she was trying to talk to me while I was watching the game. But after I politely asked her to both stop talking to me and possibly leave the house because she's bad luck, it all went downhill for them. I'm still in trouble for that one, so I thought I'd bring it up.
I'm sure she won't be listening, so it's fine.
That's true.
The Sea Eagles, a bit of a COVID scare there. Jake Trbojevic and Sipley are both.
No, it's Andrew Davey.
Andrew Davey
Yeah.
are out through COVID. Tolu Kula is a guy who I've been talking up for so long. I played him in my team for so long when he was scoring 30s and 40s. I said, he's going to have some massive games. He'll have some massive games. I sold him as soon as he went on that run of huge games.
Yeah, and last week, before the game started, I said, look, Cooler it was against the Knights, wasn't it? I said, it's a really good play here, but I'm not playing him because I've got to go out to the movies. So I'm going to play Isaiah Tass instead because I can watch the game. And within like 10 minutes he scores and I'm like, ah. Anyway, look, I'm holding. I'll sell next week. He's going to make another 60K. Just money galore. It's great.
Knights v the Roosters. At the Knights they got Dom Young out.
But in the reserves.
But in the reserves.
Yeah, so they've given him. They're giving him time. He may still be named. We'll see.
Again, pretty boring team for SuperCoach.
Yeah,
could Ponga be a really left field pod?
I was going to say that. Like, I think he's at 480K, give or take. And there are a couple of people in the Q&A today who are saying, "Oh, what do you think of Kalen Ponga?" I'm like, "Oh no, I'm not even putting him in my kids' team." No, I just can't risk it.
Does fire up for Origin though? It appears. He can play 3 big games per year.
Yeah, he's got a touch of the gaggers about him.
Doesn't
doesn't
go
fair,
guns for the Knights each week. At the Chooks, obviously a lot going on here. You got Takiaho out probably long term with a cheekbone. Tupanua ACL, Billy Smith ACL, but then they've got a bunch of guys back with Luke Keary and Jared Warrior-Hargraves. So
yeah, look, the losses are bad, but like having Joey Manu is a luxury to be able to slot him back to centre, and that's pretty much a great replacement for Smith. I was kind of happy with what Lodge did. Against the Dragons, it was underrated because it was all about the Manu show, and Lodge only played maybe the last 20 minutes, but what he did was important. He got the team rolling forward. He was a big man that's where the Roosters perhaps have been a little weak, I've got to say, in the forwards, is they could be dominated. I think it'd be hard to dominate a forward pack with Lodge and Warrior-Hargraves there. And the other issue I'd say, with the injury to Toops is that guarantees Angus Crichton, 80 minutes on an edge, and maybe he'll shift over to the left and score some tries.
Yeah, I hope so. I had Crichton highlighted as well. Back to a bit of form on the weekend. Hadn't been great over the Origin series for the Roosters. They'd been easing him through, I think, but back to 70 points on the weekend. There was a try assist in there, so it wasn't all in base. But I feel
score a try at some point.
Yeah, I feel like we're going to see something decent from Crichton in the next few weeks.
I agree.
After a lot sold. Raiders v the Warriors. At the Raiders, James Schiller is out after what was basically a match-winning display last weekend against the Storm. Any other guys stand out for you?
Tapane just keeps producing. He's stepped up. The other one I want to give a shout out to, this is less Supercoachy, although Supercoach is good, but Adam Elliott has been dominant in the middle. He was
done by
so
him in
good.
a draft league. Yeah,
so good.
Very good. I think he got, we don't know Dally M points now, but I think he probably would have got 3.
And that was in a team that beat, Melbourne in Melbourne. He has absolutely impressed me. Yep.
Moving on to the Warriors, Reece Walsh on the bench. So they're already looking to next season, and Walsh obviously leaving to go to the Broncos. So
yeah, but the bloke they're replacing him with is leaving as well.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Oh, Chanel Harris-Tavita, yeah. So he's going on his travel writing adventure.
Indeed, yeah.
Anyone stand out? Oh, Tohu's been good the last. So I was really considering selling him. He's gone on with two 90s in a row, and he's got attacking stats in there too.
Yeah, I mean that's the Tohu that we were getting rightly bagged for, having pumped his tyres up, and everyone's like, "Oh, you're pumping him up. He's getting 45s." I mean, that's the Tohu we were expecting. It just took a little longer than some of us were hoping for. Panthers
v Sharks, big clash. This one, a real probably
top 4,
a precursor for what could be happening in September. In terms of the Panthers, you look through this team and almost every single player in it is Supercoach relevant, particularly the back line with guys like Taylor May and Isaac Targo. But I'm also seeing a lot of people selling May and Targo to bring in these centre wing big guns like Holmes, Garrick, Manu, etc.
I mean, Targa has been going. Sorry, Tango. Oh, there's a course you can do on it, and I've got to do the pronunciation of the Pacifica and Maori names better. I'll just say this out. I'm gonna work on it. Anyway, Isaac has been going
spelled in an incredibly weird way.
Yeah, but at least I'm not stuffing that one up. Has been going really well. Taylor May. Oh, he was only a drop ball away from a line break and a try, and it wasn't dropped by much. It just sort of flicked out. Look, yeah, I probably could get around selling one of them to get to Ruben Garrick, but I'm also pretty happy holding them.
Question, who's your captain going to be? And the reason I ask is because Cleary is taking on Nico Hines, who have been the most popular captains this season. They're both playing each other in what presumably will be a semi-final style of game, meaning that they might not go absolutely gangbusters.
Yeah, and you know, Souths with Latrell are playing the Storm with Munster, so those are tough games there. So I'm going Ruben Garrick as my vice-captain, and I'll probably go Val Holmes as captain, which is risky. I hate having my captain in the last game.
Good that Talakai's back for the Sharks, though, after missing last week, having failed to back up from Origin. Rabbitohs v the Storm, you mentioned it just before, but another bumper clash. Everyone's all over Latrell, but the guy I want to talk about is Jed Cartwright, who most people bought in for the buy thinking that he would nuff out. It hasn't happened, and in fact, he's starting at centre this week, and he's set for a 50k price rise. So on a normal week, or earlier in the season, we'd be thinking about him as a serious cheapie.
Oh, 100%. I got him in as a buy enough. But then, you know, I don't think I'll cash him out. I don't think he's going to get to enough value. But Isaiah Tass, I will probably cash out. I think
Tass
Campbell
has been good. Like, even with no tries, Tass gets 45-50.
Good work rate. Campbell Graham is due back in a couple of weeks, give or take, I think, from his facial fracture. So definitely one of them will go out then, and let's see who it is. I'm just hoping Tass can make enough money before then.
Interesting that Tane Milne's not there. I'm not sure what the go is with him, but he's not in the team altogether, so I'm assuming that he is injured. The Storm, what have we got going on there? Obviously, Pap's out, so Nick Meaney goes to fullback. Supercoach-wise, everyone's all over Munster.
Nick Meaney's like a 70 points per game guy at fullback with goal kicking for the Storm. You know, I prefer Ruben Garrick, but if you're looking for someone, and Meaney's no cheapie after he had that nice run there before when Paps was out, but he's one to look at.
Harry Grant's really popular this week as well, as people look to bring in those guys post-Origin.
Yeah, he was hobbling around a little bit, I've got to say.
Yeah, he picked up a cork in Origin, and he was in a little bit of doubt. And he always seems to be hobbling around. He always seems to be carrying some sort of injury. But hopefully he can bang out big minutes from now until the end of the season, and then maybe get injured for the finals, and then the Storm can get, you can just get rid of him.
That's unkind, Thomas.
No. Bulldogs v the Titans. It's a real bottom of the table clash, this one. Not really liking anyone from either of these teams. Carraz is a guy who's a really popular sell again, and he's made almost 300k.
You picked up David Fafita, didn't you?
I did pick up Fafita, and he was okay.
Yeah, he's pretty good.
He was okay. I mean, I was going to go Cameron Murray, but then Murray's concussion during Origin meant I went for Fafita. The guy I really wanted to play earlier in the season is Sesefo Fafita, who got 49 on debut, basically all in base. So if he came along earlier in the year, he would have been an amazing cheapie, but it's just a bit too late in the season for that.
Yeah, the Titans seem to have sort of a deep well of hard-running, tackle-busting big wingers. They just only pick them for 3 games at a time.
Greg Marzu.
Yeah.
Hard out. Cowboys v the Tigers. Cowboys are pretty popular Supercoach team. Holmes, a lot of people are over this week. Scott Drinkwater's been really good for them as well.
Yeah, those are the standouts, aren't they? I mean, Jeremiah Nanai has a good run, and I'm sure he'll have another one. The bench is interesting with a centre, a hooker / fullback, and a couple of front rowers. So, is there any concerns there whatsoever that Hamiso comes on for Val Holmes? I don't think so, but it is something I'm sort of thinking about when I'm looking at who I'm going to captain. I'd hate that to happen in the last round. Last game of the round, you can't have much flexibility there. So
Yes,
hopefully Garrick takes the decision out of my hands with 150.
very strange bench there for the Cowboys. And then at the Tigers, what are you thinking here? I love Adam Dewey at 5'8", but he's pretty expensive.
That's the one. That's the only one. He's pretty expensive. He was really engaged last week, but that was against Penrith B. I mean, that was like St Greg's of Penrith sort of thing, the number of 7 guys out. But, he just wants it. You can see he wants it. He wants to be to compete. He wants the ball. He wants to run. He made heaps of errors. The game was awful. Did you watch that game? The completion rate was pathetic in the second half after a good first half. But Dewey was right in there. So if I was ever going to get one, Tiger, it's him, but not at the price.
No, not for me. And that is our team podcast for round 19. Good luck on the weekend. Big thanks to Rob. Great to have you back from leave.
Thanks. Speak tomorrow.
We'll speak tomorrow. See you then.